Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. Today we are going to be talking about hands, right? Three most complicated things that always come up in drawing are heads, hands, and feet. We've talked about heads last week, or more specifically, the profile of drawing the human head last week. And this week we're going to talk about hands. Next week we are going to talk about feet. So, hands. It's interesting that when learning how to draw the figure, especially gesture drawing, you don't usually have the time to get into the specificity of hands. You don't usually have time to get in specificity of feet. And we did a video on this, by the way. If you look back, you will find a video where we talk about heads, hands, and feet within gesture drawing. And that's not this. This is more of a deep dive on hands itself, and our approach to drawing hands. And as the description for today said, we're going to answer the questions of like, why do my fingers look like they're always broken? Or why do my hand drawings look awkward, right? What's so strange about the hands that I draw? There are very distinct, specific tips that we're going to share with you to hopefully help you get out of these traps, right? So before we do so, let's say hello to the gang. How's it going, Swenley?
Good. Very excited. I was just thinking hands used to be like the hardest thing for me to draw, even harder than heads, until I learned force, and especially about thinking in terms of function. Then all of a sudden I find it pretty easy nowadays to draw hands, to be honest.
Yeah, I love drawing hands. I mean, I love the simplicity combined with the intricacy of doing it, and they're so expressive, as you could say, my Italian side's coming out. I mean, I love hands, as you'll see on my Instagram, there's plenty of posts where all I did was just draw hands, and the ones that you're seeing behind me are hand drawings from the anatomy book. To me, drawing the hand is almost like drawing a full gesture. It's like, here's like a whole other story all in itself, right? So not only do you have the gesture of the body, but you got the gesture of the hands, and they're just so damn expressive, and I really geek out on this stuff, like me doing this, it's like if I were to sit and watch my own recording, it's like I really geek out on this stuff. My hands going like this is me implying stuff, right? It's like, bigness, right? It's like stuff. So, hands and speech and facial expression and how all that stuff starts to come together, man, I love analyzing the psychology behind all of that, like doing this, you'll see in movies, you see people do this, right? Like they put their hands together or tap fingers like this, right? Doing this is different than tapping. It's kind of funny, right? Just me doing this, to me, this is more of a sense of accuracy, of specificity, right? Because you're bringing your fingertips together, and that takes acuity, right, to do that. As soon as I start tapping, it feels more like thinking, it's like pondering, right? I'm pondering. So wow, isn't that insane, right? This to this to this, and three major different ideas. Now, depending on who I am as let's say a character, what the situation is, those things could mean very different things, right? It's like, I'm pondering the destruction of the planet, right? I'm pondering what I want to eat for dessert, right? Like it could mean, drastically different things depending on the context around it, right? I don't know. Like I said, I could talk about just this alone, just the mannerism of hands and conversations and human emotions and body expression. All that stuff is so, like I said, so interesting to me. Anyway, how are you doing, Mrityunjay?
I'm doing good. You actually explained what what I want to say. So yeah, you can see right behind me as well one of my hand drawings, and you know how crazy I am for drawing hands. I would always say this: if only I had like one option given to draw what subject I would draw for the rest of my life, that would be hands.
Yeah, cool.
Do I need to say anything else, right?
No, that's a pretty powerful statement. There's only one thing you had left to draw, that you could pick to draw. Yeah, it's cool.
I would pick
I'm say what?
I would pick hands or head.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's very, very interesting things. I would probably say the same thing. I'd probably end up being one of the two. There's just the balance of detail versus expression is, is awesome and so meaningful. All right, well, let's get to it. I'm going to be starting us today. So I'm going to share with you a little story. I think for me, the first thing I think about personally when I think about hands is getting into Disney animation. I had my figure drawing stuff down when it came to the portfolio, but I really wanted to show that I knew what I was doing and tried to bump up the skill level of my portfolio. So I had hand drawings in there and I had facial expressions in there as well. And for the hand drawings, um, I looked a lot at Sword in the Stone, believe it or not. Sword in the Stone is probably my favorite Disney movie when it comes to hands. I know that's so weird. It's like there's so many different reasons to pick which films you like and songs and so on. But I happen to like Sword in the Stone for hand drawings. There's some really great design in there. I like how the hands are blocky. The structure is really good, and yet they're gestural. There's a scene in the film where Arthur, the main, King Arthur, he's Arthur as a boy. He like runs into the woods, and his stepbrother is like chasing him in, and I forget he threatens him, and his hand is like at the camera, kind of like mine is right now. He's like, "You do blah 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 blah," and he's like talking, and his hands like gesturing right into the camera. And I remember being down at not only did I use that to get into Disney, but when I was at Disney, they had this thing, a thermal printer that would allow you to freeze frame off of the VHS tapes that were there, and you could make printouts of these shots. So I grabbed like full sequences of that I would like sit and study and draw from, and yeah, I just loved it. I just really, really loved it. The other big thing I learned, actually, I'll share when Swenley comes up. I don't want to give it away now and steal his thunder, but it was ways of seeing some of the abstract shapes that deal with hands. That was another big thing for me that I learned at Disney. Like I said, that's one will be filling you in on later. So I don't know. So hands, like I said, hands to me in my personal life kind of go along with me getting into Disney animation and then working at Disney and the importance of hands. Ironically, not on the film because I was on Lion King. Lion King had paws, no hands, right? So it wasn't like it was in the films themselves. But there was a lot of stuff surrounding hands for me that dealt with getting into the studio and so on. Now, one other thing that I did learn while I was at Disney Animation that really stuck out to me, and I don't remember who told me this, but it always stuck with me, and I've taught this principle for now, almost 30 years. And that is that your hands don't do, awkward, strange things. Like one mistake I tried to make sure I didn't make, and fortunately I didn't for my portfolio, was to like take your hand and pose it in all kinds of like weird little positions. Like this finger is going to do this, and this finger is going to do this thing, and this finger is going to do this thing, and this, like your hand doesn't work like that, right? What you do when you start thinking like that is you cause a sense of chaos, right? And your hand is not chaotic. Our hands do many different gestures, but there could almost be a book of gestures of like hand gestures, just like we have with torsos. CS, CS, and RS torsos, these four types. I could probably, photograph hands and say, here's like the 40 gestures that occur. And there are books on this kind of stuff. And talking about hand gestures, of course, gestures with hands mean different things in different countries. So you got to watch what you do with your hands from one country to another as well, right? But that's interesting, right? Because that implies, well, it says that, our hands are a way of communicating, right? We communicate with our hands and they mean, like I said, many different things in different places. And some gestures mean the same thing, no matter what country you go to, right? It's a global, there are global symbols, global gestures with hands. So my point here with this slide is if you're going to draw hands, which I think you should, don't pose them chaotically. Come up with gestures or have your hands do things like pick something up, right? I have my phone here. It's like if I pick up my phone, this is what my hand looks like when I pick up my phone, right? Like this is a gesture right here. What my thumb is doing on the other side versus the other fingers, that's a gesture. I have a water bottle here, right? It's like if I grab the water bottle, this is how I hold the water bottle. I'm not going to all of a sudden do some weird spidery thing with my hand to hold the bottle, right? I'm going to do this. Maybe I got my pinky up if I want to be fancy about it, right? But I'm going to hold it in a certain way. I'm not going to do some weird thing. My hand isn't going to suddenly spaz out to like do a particular action. So don't do that. Don't draw that. Instead, what we're looking for is unity of a job, right? Of an expression, right? A function, right? Our hands do particular functions. I really found quite interesting, I have to say, this picture that I grabbed here in the top left corner. And this is when you have, so the thing I was talking about with Disney, to bring this in, somebody at Disney had said to me, the hand is like a squad, like a military squad. And that really stuck with me. That really resonated for me. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You got 5 soldiers and they're all doing their job together towards one goal, towards one idea. So here in this picture, the idea is we need to go up this ladder, right, to get onto this roof, right, for instance. So one guy's job is to start going up the ladder. Another guy, you'll notice, is pointing his gun up at the top of the ladder. And then the other guys are coverage to allow that guy to get up the ladder. Like nobody's going to get shot at while we're doing this, right? Because this is high risk, right? The guy going up the ladder is going to be in a very risky position, right? And the other guys are protecting him. So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about today, right? It's like all your fingers are going to work towards one goal, one job. And then I grabbed this image. I was just thinking about what are other things in nature that happen with unity. Like I live now in Washington State, and I can't tell you how many birds we see flying overhead, right? These squadrons of birds. And isn't it weird that they like naturally set themselves up in a triangle, right? It's like a giant arrow, flying. Why is it that the arrow isn't inverted, right? And it makes sense, of course, because if it was inverted, you would have 2 points, right, going forward instead of one, right? So the arrow has one distinct point, the tip of the spear, right, the tip of the arrow. And then that they know to fly off of the side of each other and stack like that, I just think is really interesting, right? So they're cutting through the air as a squadron, and they're able to follow each other more clearly like this instead of chaotically. Now there are other birds, I'm sure you've seen videos of like hundreds of birds in the sky that look like a big amorphic mass, and they still move together, but the mass is more amorphic. It's usually smaller birds, right? Larger birds fly in these squadrons like these are, right? Like these are geese, or you might see pelicans flying, and they'll fly in small squadrons, right? The smaller guys just go into these bigger bunches. So how do we bring this abstract thinking to the hand? This is the goal. My portion of today, if you leave with anything today on this, is to remember that hands work as a unit, right? And you want to figure out that unit, their job is called a gesture, right? And these gestures serve functions. It could be language or something more practical. And that's some of the stuff I'm going to show you right now. So our first function or gesture that I grabbed here was like a slamming of a fist, right? Our hand can be meant to touch and or caress, and yet it can be used as a weapon and as a tool, right? You could put your hand through a wall, right? Just like you could a hammer. I would not recommend trying to hammer in a nail with your hand, by the way. That is not a good idea, right? That now we're going into like surface tension and displacement. You don't want to hit something really tiny and metallic and hard like that with your hand, which is a lot softer. You'll puncture your hand, right? So don't do that. But the idea of your hand being like a hammer, that it's that strong when it comes together like a fist, and you could pound a table like that. You could put your hand through a table or through a wall like a hammer, does work, right? Our hands are hard on the outside and soft on the inside. So it's got lots of different jobs just in its anatomy. So be aware of that. And then, I didn't bring this photo in for this, but notice the other hand. The other hand is like a platform, right? It's been flattened out. So this actor can lean over their hand, right, as a stabilizer, as a platform, instead of, and it's well balanced, right, because the hand is flat. Imagine if the other hand, the screen right hand, was the guy like resting on his knuckle of his finger or something, right, or just on his fingertip, right? That's way more precarious than him putting the flat platform of his hand down on the table, right? So a first function here is your hand is something like a hammer or a tool as a weapon, right? That it's got power, it's hard on the outside, right? That's just one. Swenley brought this one up on Wednesday when we talked about this, and I thought, man, that is really just such a clever idea. You know, the hand is like a wrench. So I found an image I thought really made the shape of the hand look like a torque wrench. And you could see here how your fingers, you know, the thumb on the doorknob and the pointer finger and the middle finger, right, are grabbing the door just like the wrench grabs the, you know, the lug nut here, right? And it's this turning action that in both cases either opens or closes something or can tighten or loosen something, right? Like it's just ingenious, right? And I think it's no accident that the tools we use in our world remind us of the human body, because I do think that that's where these things came from. You know, we've kind of talked about this in the past with function. A lot of the you know, the architecture, the mechanisms in our world are based off the human body. So here's this focus on the hands, and look at that. I mean, it's like such a direct correlation. They look like the same photograph, right? Just awesome. So I started thinking, instead of just like the function of the hand, those were two like really hard functions, the idea of like a fist or grabbing something. This goes a little bit more into sign language, right? It's like we all know about this universal idea of stop, right? Like putting your hand up is stop, right? And that's amazing, right? It's amazing that as just a human being that we're taking our hand, putting it up like this in this kind of gesture means stop. That's very different than the back of the hand, right? If I do this with the back of my hand, I don't feel like that means the same thing. There's something unique about putting your palm in front of you, or really more of like in between you and whatever thing you're telling to stop, than it is to show the back of your hand. It doesn't mean the same thing, right? So, you know, out in the world, of course, we have stop signs, these octagonal shaped signs with the word stop literally printed in front of it, and all this effort to create something that means stop, when as a human being, all you have to do is put your hand up, right? You know, palm out, and that is a universal idea, right? The idea of stop. I just think, you know, maybe sounds like I'm geeking out here, but I am. I think it's really intriguing to think that we can all do something so simple and it means something so powerful, right? Really cool. Pointing, right? Pointing. Again, so simple, so powerful. This one kind of reminds me of the guy going up the ladder, right? Because one guy is doing the main job here, which in this case is the pointer finger, is doing the pointing. And it's the retraction of the other fingers that allows that finger to be more isolated and be called out in its job, right? So the whole unit has to do that. If I point and I put all fingers out, I'm not pointing, right? The pointing has been taken away. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but politicians and public speakers, what you learn is not to point with one finger. You point with two fingers. It's actually like less offensive. And I think this is just because it's more blunt. You know, it's more blunt. It also feels less accusatory. You know, the idea of pointing with one finger is like, you know, you did this, you did that, you're doing something wrong, right? It's also like parental, right? One finger. You don't see a lot of parents pointing at their kid with two fingers, right? So the two finger point has become more of this like gestural point, as like I said, a public speaker or something of that nature. And I hate to say it, but I'm actually aware of it. Like when I'm teaching, it's something I'm mindful, especially when doing workshops, because this really does feel more accusatory, you know? So you can get away with two guys on the ladder, right? Three doesn't feel like pointing anymore. This starts feeling like I'm going into other symbols and starting to mean other things. Four, forget it. You know, five just doesn't work anymore, right? So it's one or two that actually still operate, which is also kind of interesting. All right, and last but not least, the last image I brought in here is hands together. It could be one hand also, but coupled really create a shovel, right? A spoon, right? And it is kind of like a spoon or a bowl, right? You bring your hands together. I would say one is like a spoon, two is like a bowl. You know, and you can drink water like this, eat food like this, right? It also could mean giving, right? The idea, the symbol of itself shows that you are holding something. And by moving that forward, you're saying that you're giving whatever you are holding to somebody else. And, again, you'll notice that out in the real world in construction, that we have machines that do the same thing, right? That basically an upside down arm, digging down to the dirt and scooping it up like this, like in my profile, right? So I leave you today with my portion, which is to recognize this. If you're going to draw hands, the first mistake that students make, that artists make in drawing hands, is coming up with cockamamie ideas for what your fingers are doing and what the hand is doing. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Go after specific ideas that are, generalized gestures and draw them, right? Don't go after all kinds of crazy things. Don't grab every finger and try to pose it in some kind of other weird fashion. Go for major gestures. And by the way, before I leave, as some of you probably know at this point, I'm a comic book fan. I really went to school for comics. Ironically, when my life led me into animation and video games. And I bring up comics because I think I admire comic book artists where I can tell that they draw hands really well and they're using their own hands. It's like, if there's one thing, there's no excuse to draw poorly, as difficult as they are, is to draw hands, because you've got your own pair of hands. So I'm right-handed, which means I would look at my left hand. If I want to get a right hand drawn, just grab a mirror, right? Take your left hand, put it in a mirror. Now it's a right hand, right? So I really admire and appreciate when I look at something like comics, and I can tell that the person drawing those comics is drawing hands really, really well, like super well. And you can tell like they're probably studying their own hands and gesture. And it brings a whole new level to the artwork within the comic when they do that. It's a whole other level of expression, that the characters are going through. Instead of characters' hands, behind their back, hands behind the backs, hands in pockets, hiding behind things, right? Like just doing whatever they can to disguise, the job of the hands versus just how expressive and storytelling they can be. All right, so that's everything I got. I believe Mrityunjay is next.
Yes. All right, Mike. Thank you for showing the emotional part of today's stream. That's very important, by the way. I would just say, hands are expressive, and this is where the conversation actually starts with. And you just like the figure drawing that we're doing, you don't want to get into just straight away, figure drawing technical proportions and stuff, right? It is so much more than that. So expressions, right? This actually brings us to how do we basically start with those hands? Now we finally start to draw some hands. And before actually covering this, I'm just gonna cover a little bit over like what are the forces of the hands, like how we are like drawing them. Okay, so here are some couple photos. I'm just gonna be basically explaining you like what the gesture is, and then we'll go to the form section. Okay, directly. So the first thing, we basically, all the Forge guys out there, I'm just gonna be opening the chat here really quick. Yeah. So anybody like from the Force community, they would instantly know that we have this like one sweep of the arm, So the force is gonna be like coming from the forearm, right? And it connects right to the hand, obviously. So usually it's at the bottom. Usually, it's also at the bottom. It's also at the top, right? Usually it's at the top. Okay. The force is in the top. It kind of like switches up. For example, the force is coming from here, it's switching to the ball of, I would not say ball of the hand, but the bottom of the hand. It will like switches up to the hand. Okay. It's top of the hand, like usually have the force. Now it goes to the fingers. Okay. And the main mistake happens here. Okay. Within the fingers, by the way. So you have the force in the finger at the top, okay, but it switches at the bottom, okay, right? So we have three parts to our fingers, okay. We have three bones, okay, to every finger like this, and just at the last, what do you say, the connection, right? It would switch at the bottom, okay. So I had a finger like this, and as you can see in the camera, I had the force in the top, as you can see, because the finger bends inside, right? It doesn't like bend opposite. Okay. So that's why like the force is on the top. And because there's a nail in here, right? So here that will be a nail. That's why it's a straight. Okay. It's considered as a straight and not a curve, because its curve is at the bottom, by the way. Now, this usually brings us to the idea that it's like a butter knife. Okay. So basically, I would go like this, right? This is also illustrated well in the anatomy book, and I think in the first force book as well. But here how it goes, right? Basically the butter knife thing. So there we go. Basically at the top of the hand, the force would be at top of the hand. It would go into the finger, and in the finger, it switches at the bottom. Okay. Now, usually you want to include like some sort of structure within the hand itself as well. So once you have the forces down, let's say something like this, then you would also obviously put the structure inside it. Occasionally like bring the volumes and such. So we'll go through some hands, but first let's look at some notes here, like how you want to start with. This is the notes that I posted in today on Instagram. And so here we go. So the first thing you would need is the structure of the palm itself. Okay. We have the palm. Okay. As you can see, it's like a box. Okay. You can take it as a simple box like this. Obviously the middle finger is the highest. So basically what the hand is not like flat. Okay? You don't want to draw a hand which is like just like this. Okay. It's not how it likes it. It's like more a robotic hand, not a real human hand. So it's got like this asymmetry like to the overall design. And the first main feature is it's an arc. Okay, like everything is like arranged in an arc. So as you like start at the top of the hand, it starts to go like this. Okay, so start with the box. Okay, start with the box, but then you want to like have a house roof, okay, on top like this for the middle finger, which is usually like this, which actually brings in some sort of you say like unbalanced like finger design. Not unbalanced, I should say, but it's one is higher, one is like lower. Okay, so you basically like have this arc kind of design to it. And you would see like in my hand too, you see like this kind of arc, right? Arc, 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 right? Everything has an arc. And even at the top of the hand, you would see this like great arc right here. So what do you do after this? Okay. You offset it a little bit, okay, because it's like this. You offset this roof a little bit like towards the thumb side. Okay, this is the thumb side, by the way. You offset this roof towards the thumb side, and this is what's going to give you the main the structure of the palm. Obviously this is in 2D. We're going to take that into 3D now, but this is how it goes. Okay, now just like I told you, it's an arc. So from here, what you would do is take the same thing like this. This is the palm, this is the thumb, by the way. The fingers it's the same length, right? All the fingers are the same length, just because they're attached. Like here is a collection of 8 bones right here, okay, which you can see, and that helps us like move our hand, like articulate our hand. And whenever obviously it's like a circular surface, so every bone attached to this has like different levels. Okay, and the middle finger, like the middle, basically the thing is like has the highest of all. Okay, just like that. And see, we finally once you understand this, we finally start to get like a drawing which looks like a hand now. Okay, more like this. You also want to make sure that the fingers are going like it's kind of curving inside a little bit. Okay, so it's not as like straight parallel, it's like curving inside a little bit. Okay, this is all the main stuff you want to know how it goes, like how the design of the palm is. And finally we can start to take that over 3D. So obviously if you have this kind of like house shape, a house offset kind of shape towards in 3D form, it would look like this, right? So we finally start to take the box in. Now, obviously, what do you need, right? Perspective. Okay, so much important. You can take it as a box. You can actually start with the box like this. Okay, the simple box like that. And you can see like what kind of changes we are doing to this box. The first thing that I would do is level it down, okay, from the front. So this is the front part where the fingers would come off, okay. And it is a thin part. Okay, the back of the hand is like much more volumetric, but the front is like more thin. Okay, like that. So now we have the box like this, and obviously we have the same sort of thing where this has like an offset level. Okay, like this. So there we go. We have some customization of the box, and this is finally gonna be your box, okay, or for the 3D form that you're gonna be using to draw hands in perspective or just to put structure inside of them. Okay. Let's just talk about fingers a little bit. So you want to like start with the gesture. One thing in common, start with the gesture. Okay. Start with the hand gesture. I'm going to be drawing some hands after this, and then you will see how it works. Okay. But start with the gesture. So here, see, I started with a finger that is just going to be having the force at the top and the force at the bottom. The force at the bottom of the finger is always there, like it doesn't never changes. For example, if I do my fingers like this, see now the force has switched to the bottom of the finger. Okay, so it does change. Okay, if I do it like this, right? See how the force is just switched to the bottom of the finger. Okay, like that. So in that case, well, the force in the final joint, like then the final bone is already at the bottom, and now the whole force is also at the bottom. So it just is the same. It will be called as the same force. Okay, it will just be the same force. But either way, once you have whatever forces you had from top to the bottom, or the one force at the bottom, whatever you have it, you can start to like put in some structures around it. Okay, in a finger, by the way, we have this hierarchical length. Okay, so the carpo here, or I should say the carpos, these 8 bones are called carpos. This is called metacarpal, okay, which is in the palm. Okay, so and these 3 bones are called phalanges. You see, like we have 3 different parts, and this is the longest one, right? This is the medium one, and this is the shortest one. So we have this like hierarchical length related to that. The shortest one, the medium one, and the larger one. Okay, so basic fingers look like this. So all you want to do is, after putting in the structure, just putting the turning edge related to the length. And there we go. You know, you have a finger in perspective with the box. Okay. Obviously, you know, without perspective, not possible at all, right? We have, I think we have discussed, you know, perspective in many streams before, right? So all just got to do is go and check them out. Okay. All right. So now we can finally start to put it together with just this. So have a look at the notes here. Okay, it's again same thing as a house offset. Okay, making a little bit offset. See, I'm using the same box thing. Okay, like same thing for box, and then you want to like put out those fingers. Okay, like this. And there we go. There's so many things. There's no way, you know, we can cover this in like a 1 hour stream, but this is what you want to understand, like mostly. Okay, first perspective. Okay, some general things about hands, like how to have this palm and things like that. And then yeah, how to not break the fingers. Okay, just to make like fingers forceful, and start to attach them, and you see like you can get a few hand drawings. Now, how do you start with it? Okay, let's go over this one. The first thing obviously you need is the expression of the hand, like what the hand is doing here. Obviously, this is not like holding something or doing some function. It's just like a cool pose, I would say. So, you know, what do you want to usually start with is a gesture. One of the mistakes that I've seen people also doing is not connecting the hand wall with the arm. Okay, and the arm is the forces at the bottom, or the back of the elbow, or the back of the arm, I should say. So it's coming from the bottom right here, and it's going like this. So two main once you get like the 2 main forces, which is like this, now we can finally start like draw the hand. Now see, just like I said, in the fingers, the forces at the top, and we'll switch at the bottom right here. Okay, switch at the bottom, switch at the bottom. Okay, so let's go over this. I'm just gonna be quickly drawing now. Forces at the bottom, right? It's coming at the bottom of it's coming in the bottom of the hand, and it switches to the top. Okay, so this is how actually it works, like this. Okay. Fingers. Okay. We have fingers. I'm doing like really just gestures of the fingers. I'm not like worrying about the form at this stage. All I'm just like doing is a gesture. See, this is coming out a little bit, and this pinky is like bending towards us. Okay. So I should do it like this. Okay, bending towards us. So there we go. We have a simple gesture of the hand. And now we can finally start put in the boxes. Okay. So you see what's happening within this hand. Just gonna take another color here. You see, like that's the turning edge right there. Okay, this is the turning edge. This is the bottom of the plane, bottom of the box. Okay, this is side of the hand. Okay, this is almost like this. So yeah, let's try to put that in a drawing. I'm just gonna draw it. I'm just gonna raise it a little bit lighter so you see it all the time. Right there we go. I'm gonna using my gesture brush here again. Okay, there we go. Now, see, once you have the solid start, okay, of the gesture, now if you put boxes in, it will not become stiff. Okay, it will still stay as expressive as you would have started. Okay. I'm just gonna be putting in the thumb really quick here. Just like I said, with the thumb, it's a little bit different. On in the fingers, we have 3 phalanges. These are called phalanges, by the way, these bones. Or we just like call them 3 bones for now. And in the thumb, we have only 2. Okay, so instead of 3, now we have 2, but the force is going to be still the same. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, okay, here's the force of the thumb, and again, it switches at the bottom right there. Okay, now putting in the straight. Okay, putting in the straight of the. Sorry. Yeah, putting in the straight of the thumb. It's going to be like this. These are and you want to learn about the fat pads as well. Okay, so if we have a palm like facing towards you, we have 3 main pads, okay, or 3 main volumes of the hand. Okay, it basically creates a triangle in the middle. The thumb is gonna be the thumb pad. Okay, I just like call them pad. The thumb pad is gonna be the most volumetric. Okay, so this is what you see right here. Okay, this is the thumb pad right here. Okay, now let's talk about give your fingers a little bit of structure. I'm just gonna be putting this really quickly here. I guess like a box. There we go. Now we have the structure here. Okay, let's go over the fingers really quick. I'm just gonna making a little bit more specific right now. Just like before that, I just gave the expression like this. I'm just gonna make giving it breaks. But the break doesn't mean it's a break of the force. It's just the angle change. Okay. I'm just gonna making a little bit specific right here. Okay. See the force is at the bottom. That's why I'm just like giving it straight at the top and bottom. I'm just giving it more curve. Okay, because the force is right there. Now, obviously, for the force students out there in the chat, the curve, there's a straight against curve all the time. Okay, so we basically have a force shape right there, which Svenli is going to cover. Okay, I'm not going to cover that too much, but here I'm using it. That's why I'm just letting you know. Okay, so here we have the main thing with the fingers. Again, there's one more challenge with it is the fat pads. Okay, so people would say, oh, the fat pads, they are curved. So what I do with them? So basically, let's say you have a finger like this and you have the force at the bottom and the last one, have the nail, you have this kind of design to it. Now, what you're going to do after this one? Obviously, you divide, but now you have the fat pads. Okay. Now, at the bottom of the finger, obviously, there's always force, whether the finger is like this or whether the finger is like this. So there's always a force at the bottom of the finger. So all you have to worry about is like this fat pad, this and this. And these are not muscles, by the way. These are just fat pads. But you can give them a little bit curve, but now because you're also like designing those fingers to be like more functional and more dynamic, you can actually start to play with it. Okay, and that's what we will do here. Okay, so here you see like it's not as bulged up. Okay, so I'm just going to be keeping it fairly straight, by the way here. Okay, I'm just going to be giving a little bit of curve, but my main goal is to give this thing. Okay, like the force is always at the top. Not always, like except this situation where it's at the bottom, but here in this case, it's usually at the top. Okay. I'm just going to be giving this giving this a turning edge, and that's where I'm completing the form of this finger. Okay, like that. Is there any chat? Is there a question in the chat, guys? Which I should be able to, which I should answer.
No, you're doing fine. Just keep trying to focus on structure, okay? So we
Yes.
make sure we give Swenley room for his segment.
So difficult to just not get in there.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. I'm just gonna be giving it a turning edge. That's it. That's it for the thumb as well. Okay. Yeah. So see, it's kind of easy again. You know, once you understand the function of the finger, then it's very easy. Okay. You just basically give it some angle change. Okay, it's like this. Usually, the trick I'm using here is like seeing them as cylinders, but cylinders are sometimes not sometimes. Yeah, it's usually bad because you don't have the turning edge. But once you have the cylinder in there, you can just like put the boxes after that. So right there, see we have the box like this, we have the box like this, and see like after giving it even so many boxes now because the hand is like very functional at this point. It just doesn't feel stiff at all, right? It's just feels like much more natural because I started with. I just have to like redo this one here really quickly. Yeah, I started with the gesture here, right? So that's why it's not like looking stiff at any point. Yeah, and the same with the pinky. Now we have the skin also as well in between the hands, between the fingers. I mean, okay, so I'm just like gonna be doing that as well. Okay, finally the force at the bottom, pinky, like this. There we go. This is like the skin, which is basically just stretching across. Okay, we have it right here. Okay. Yeah, so many things, man. Just nails and how to do nails, how to connect the thumb. That's actually very important. The proportions and so on, right? There's so many things, by the way. So here we go. Just a quick one. I have like a couple more minutes. I'm just gonna do a quick one here. Let's see which one. I'm just gonna draw this one. Say this is very expressive. It's a cool force like coming from the forearm as well. Okay, so force is coming from the forearm. Again, I'm starting with the gesture. Okay, see, like this is just pointing this way, pointing this way, pointing this way. Not here. That's the another case. The force is at the bottom because the fingers are like kind of arcing way up. Okay, and in the pinky, it's on the top again. Okay, so it's like this. And this finger also, by the way, it's on the top. It's like this. Okay, just putting in the structure really quickly. So we have a little bit of the side, but mostly the thing is at the bottom. It's like this. The skin is like stretching because the pinky is like going way too. The pinky is like working so much here. It's very aggressive at this point. Just like that. And there we go. And this is like the box of the hand. Basically, we have this side edge and we have the bottom edge. It's gonna be this. Okay. With the thumb as well. Again, we have the force at the top and then at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. The three angles is what I'm remembering whenever I'm drawing thumbs. So first angle is here, second is here, third is here. And just quickly letting you know. These are the three angles that I usually go with when I'm drawing thumbs. Okay. Okay, with the fingers right there, like this, straight. Okay, then this one, straight again, making sure like a few proportions. So the index would be shorter, this would be longer, and this is going again in an arc format. Yeah, maybe this finger also I can go and this and this and this and that. Just putting in the straights really quickly. This is the mistake, right? See, like you had a force and then you had another force, it's gonna be like this kind of thing. And you don't want to have like sausage fingers as well. Okay. It's the same kind of like mistake, right? Snowman anatomy. Okay, so I think so. I'm done, right?
I missed it. Did you happen to catch the whole knuckle thing in the alignment?
The knuckle thing?
Mm-hmm. Just making sure that they stay parallel. We don't break fingers.
The knuckle, like I covered the box.
Yeah, let me see. Hold on.
Okay. So you're sure?
Yeah.
All right then.
Thank you, Mrityunjay.
Yeah, very welcome, guys.
I just want to make sure that one thing that you guys stay aware of when drawing hands that I see as a common mistake is if you have if this is a finger, and you have your three segments here, right? 1, 2, and 3. Here's a fingernail. These guys always stay parallel to one another, right? Like so. What you don't want to do, which I see often, is students making the mistake, and this is going to be super obvious here, and this isn't where the mistake is made, but I'm going to show this to you. Like you don't want a finger to do this, right? All of a sudden, this is like this way, this is this way, this is this way. Like they're in different directions. Maybe I even put this like this, right? It's got to stay straight, right? These have to stay the knuckles stay parallel to each other, or you can think of it as perpendicular to the axis of the finger. So as Mrityunjay did those drawings today that had a lot of depth in space, even then you have to make sure that you hold on to the angles, right? So a finger might be here, here, and here, and you might be looking at like underneath the finger and maybe goes all the way out to here, right? And then comes back down. Right, here's me boxing it out. But before I box it out, notice the knuckle, like it's all parallel, right? So here's like the thickness of it now. All right, like so. But those parallel moments, here's the bottom, let's say, of it, right? Those parallel moments really matter, right? Like that's where I see the big mistake occur, is making sure that that you keep those parallel. Now, it doesn't mean that all fingers need to be parallel, because you could have your hand like this, and you can have pinky like this, and the middle finger and the pointer finger and the ring finger, right, or like this, and they're each going in different directions. But per each finger, you need those knuckles need to stay parallel to one another, right? So these are like this thing. So always perpendicular to the axis, meaning 90 degrees to the finger itself. This is the 90 degrees I'm talking about. Right, and then this is super powerful. Like I said, when you start putting stuff into into perspective, I do this with a finger, and it's like this, right? It's like this has to be like this. This has to be like this, and back here, that knuckle has to be like that, right? So here's the form of it. But I know that the knuckle is like that. You see, so here I'm witnessing that underneath, and here I'm seeing it on top. See what I mean? And fingernail needs to be like that. That's the trap, right? The trap is to break those parallel moments, right? And that breaks the finger laterally, and it can't do that. So just make sure that you're very, very careful of that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Are you ready, Swim?
I
Excuse me?
Yes.
forget to share that. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. All right. All yours.
Okay, so I'm going to just bring together what Mike and Mrityunjay talked about using force shape. And shape is, of course, based on force and form. That's why we teach it in that order. First is the function, then it's the structure. And the structure and the shape kind of go hand in hand, because as soon as you draw a form, the form creates a shape. So let's recap the things that were spoken about using force shape. So first of all, first problem, sausage fingers, right? Like Matunji pointed out, you don't want this in your drawing, like fingers don't actually look like this. So how do you solve it? Well, use force shape, use straight to curve design. So again, to recap what has been shared, I think someone still had a question about this. So when you're pointing your finger, meaning when it's fully extended like this, then the directional force, the force curve, is at the bottom, which creates this this bottom knife shape. And if you're going for a more like stylized look, you can also go for like a straight at the top and an S curve at the bottom. If you look at animation, even 3D animation, you would see this kind of design being used a lot. It's very simple and appealing way to draw a finger. So either this or this. And then when the finger is slightly bent, then you have two directional forces. You have one directional force going over the first two parts of the fingers. And then you have one at the bottom of the fingertips. So for the fingertip, it's always going to be at the bottom, because functionally, here is where you touch, right? So it doesn't make sense for the force curve to be at the top. You need this curve right here, just for like the tactile function of the finger. So again, one directional force over the first two parts and another one at the bottom of the fingertip. And then when the finger is more fully bent, it's basically still this, in the sense that we still have the directional force going over the first two parts, and then we flip over to the bottom for the fingertips. So keep in mind, for the fingertip, it's always going to be at the bottom. And design-wise, you can either put the curves at the outside like this, and keep the other side straighter. So this straighter, this is straighter, and the straight for the fingertip would be here. Or you can go for the look at the bottom, meaning you can use straighter lines at the outside. And sometimes fingers can look a bit more like this. The important thing is to keep the shape asymmetrical. The problem occurs when you have this or you have this, then all of a sudden you have a stiff, non-forceful shape. So both of them go. And then, of course, this is just an abstraction. Like if you're going for a stylized finger, this could be it. But if you want to go more realistic, like Mattesi showed you earlier, you draw the shape and then you start adding the like the padding of the finger. And the important thing is to keep the straight to curve design in mind. So you want to just avoid the symmetrical shapes. So if you look at your own finger when it's bent like this bone tends to be very, very prominent, so you would see like this bone sticking up here. And in my finger specifically, I can see like a really clear arc going from here to here. So this bone always tends to be very prominent. So that's the solution to the first problem, how to avoid sausage fingers. That is by using force shape, which means straight to curve design. And the second problem would be stiff and dysfunctional hand shapes, like Mike talked about at the beginning. You don't want the fingers and the hand to be doing all kind of weird stuff. You want it to be functional. So in terms of force shape, one great tool or one great analogy that you can use is a mitten, which you can see here. It's basically a glove without the fingers, only the thumb is showing up. So, and you want to use a forceful mitten, meaning, again, you could draw a mitten that is totally stiff and non-forceful. We don't want this either. We want the hand to be fluid and forceful, of course. And like Mattesi showed you, you need to take into consideration where the force of the forearm is coming and how that connects to the hands. So we have the forearm, the palm of the hands, and notice that I grouped the fingers into one big shape. And the thumb, of course, is another shape. So here on the screen, right, you can see how I overlaid the forceful mitten over the reference. Can take into consideration where the force of the forearm is coming and how it's creating a rhythm with the palm of the hands and with the fingers. So I grouped all the fingers into one shape, and then you have the thumb. I moved out the thumb a little bit just to create negative space here and make the gesture read more clearly in silhouettes. Again, always make your drawing clearer than the reference. You can blame the reference for an unclear drawing. The drawing is your responsibility, so take artistic liberty to design, especially when you're working with shape, to design to make things clearer and more functional. So you start with the mitten and then you break it down into its smaller force shapes. So here I did another pass on top, and you can see this kind of like the angle that Mattesi talked about. Now it's kind of like a house indeed. It's a good way to remember it. Then you break it down into smaller shapes, which I also did on the overlay, and you can see the padding that Mattesi mentioned as well, meaning you have this padding here of the thumb, you have the padding of the pinky finger, you have the padding of the knuckles, and that leaves this triangular shape in the middle. So very useful trick to add some definition to the inside of the palm of the hand. So you break down the mitten into smaller shapes, then you can start adding more form. Here I just use some surface lines to add form, and even in doing that, of course, the shape of the fingers of the hand is created by its forces and forms. So even when adding these quick surface lines in the shape, I was aware of the turning edge. Notice that those lines come up to the turning edge. And even here, like this, an important moment. If I just kept that as a pointy shape, it would have flattened out the finger. So I need to be aware of the perspective. And notice the parallel angles that Mike talked about. It's a very, very like quick way to add some structure in the fingers when dealing with force shapes. Same here with the thumb. Notice that line stops at the turning edge. So I was aware of the angle. So keep in mind when using shapes, the shapes have to be based on force and form in order for them to work. And last but not least is a quick drawing from imagination. And actually, I did look at my own hands to get the gesture right. And what I want to highlight here is you group the fingers in this big shape, but then there's a hierarchy because you can also break down the bigger shape into smaller shapes. So you have one shape here, and then the pinky finger is separate in this case. So it helps to group the fingers to add some contrast and interest in your hand drawings. And if you go back and look here, it's basically what was happening here. Notice that inside this big shape, we have this shape right here. Now these three fingers are grouped and the pinky finger is separate there. So you want to look at the grouping of the fingers in any given function. So if you go back and watch the recording of the stream, the references that Mike showed and Mattesi showed, see if you can spot how the fingers are grouped to fulfill a certain function. And I think that's right on time. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys and inspired you to draw some forceful and functional hands. Let me stop the share. You're on mute, Mike.
Thank you so much, Swenley. And Mrityunjay, so we will see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to talk about feet, right? And try to cover the things that typically are easy to break in feet and, how to fix them as well. So have a great weekend and have a great week, everyone. Again, thank you, Mrityunjay and Swenley, for all your help today. And we will see you guys next week. All right. Take care. Go draw your hands. All right. You got your own models. Goodbye.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
See you guys.